In today's video, I'm going to show you some tips on how to master your wide-angle lens. But first, everybody knows that if you want to be taken seriously on YouTube as a landscape photography vlogger, you really need in your videos a dog. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Cletus, the wonder dog. Oh, your breath! Oh, God! Here you go, Cletus. Should we go and take him for a walk then?
Let's go.
Okay. Are you ready? Oh. He's peed on my leg.
No.
Is that normal? Do they do that?
I don't think so.
God's sake. Come on, Cletus.
Oh, Cletus, such a naughty boy. He may be somewhat lacking in the discipline department, but when I saw how good he was at finding sticks, well, that gave me an idea.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why Cletus the wonder dog? Well, I bet your dog can't do this. Goodbye, Cletus. Goodbye. Can you close it now? I need to get moving. There you go, Cletus. Good job. Can you carry it as well? Oh, that is brilliant. That is brilliant. Go on, Cletus. Go on. Go on.
I could feel my social appeal expanding by the minute now that I'd added a dog to my landscape photography adventures. But I did notice, though, that after his initial burst of energy, well, he got kind of lazy. But at least he wasn't pulling on his leash or dropping curly-whirlies every 5 minutes. He's a good dog, is Cletus. After just a short hike, we arrived at our destination, this beautiful hidden waterfall in the shadow of Mt Benson. We had the entire canyon all to ourselves, with lots of time to study the shapes, forms, colours and the textures of this magical little grotto right here on Vancouver Island. And that's one of my greatest pleasures in life. It's slowly contemplating what I'm going to shoot and how I intend to shoot it.
Cletus, I think he did pretty good for his very first hike.
Yeah, he's so good.
He is, yeah, well, I think that's what huskies are known for. When I went to the store, he said, what kind of dog do you want? I said, I want a husky. So he laughed at it. I said, I've heard huskies are awesome, they're good runners and that. So I got a husky, and I think it's pretty good.
He's so cute.
Yeah? Do they usually smell like that, though? Eh? What do you think? Oh, your breath. Oh,
Maybe
Cletus.
let's give him some melon.
You want some melon, Cletus? Eh? Oh, he don't like it. Right, so I've seen a potentially quite beautiful shot, and what I'm going to do is demonstrate this whole concept of using your lens distortion to your advantage. So I'll show you what it is that I'm looking at and what I'm thinking of framing up, and then I'll demonstrate how getting way closer to it and magnifying that foreground takes advantage of the beautiful lens distortion that you've probably paid a lot of money for. Let's stick this on here. Okay, bosh. Alright, so I've framed up this shot, and it's quite a nice scene. I've got this beautiful waterfall, this fallen tree, and these really gorgeous roots. And it's the roots that make this shot. I mean, the waterfall's beautiful, but I feel like without these roots in the foreground, it doesn't quite have the same magic. You know, this puts me in this mystical forest. You know, it's the forest creeping in front of the waterfall. To me, that's what makes the shot. So here I am, I'm still at 16 millimeters, right? So this is as wide as I'm going to get with this particular shot. And you'll see in the foreground these lovely roots which come in and introduce you to the scene. But what I want to do is use my lens distortion on this lens, this 16mm lens, to exaggerate and emphasize that foreground to give it more frame space. Because if you look at the frame, a good, I would say 60% of the frame is devoted to the waterfall, and that's fine. And then only, 10% of the frame is devoted to that root system, and I feel like there's an imbalance of elements. They're two very, very vital elements to this composition, so I feel like I need to give more real estate to one of those elements, which is the root system. And I think if I do that, it's not going to take away from the waterfall. It's going to balance things out so that they're a bit more even. So I'm just showing you this as like a starting point, and this is often where people will end their process. They'll get to a shot and say, oh yeah, that looks really beautiful, and stop there. But I think if you go that little bit further and really think, what can I do to emphasize this foreground? What can I do to balance out the elements? And then you'll figure out quickly that you're going to have to get closer to that foreground. So let's now move to that next shot and I'll show you the difference. Okay, so I'm much happier with this composition. I'm still at the same focal length, which is 16mm, but I moved significantly closer to this root. I would say that I'm now about 20 inches from this root that you see here. And I'm hoping that you agree, but I think that makes a far more dramatic foreground, and it leads your eye into the center of the frame towards that waterfall in a very pleasing way. And it also, by getting lower and closer, look at all the color that I've revealed in these leaves here in this little sprouting tree. To me, that's a much more interesting composition, and all I did is move just, I don't know, two maybe 3 feet closer, and it's made a drastic difference. Now, of course, I'm going to have to focus stack this. Now, you're seeing this at f2.8, and I focused on these roots here, but what I'll have to do is stop down and maybe even use a range of different apertures so that I can get the whole thing in focus, if that's what you wanted. I mean, you don't have to focus stack every single image you see. Sometimes it's nice to have elements of your landscape completely out of focus, but for this one, I don't want to lose the waterfall by having it completely blurred out. So I am going to focus stack this throughout with a range of different apertures and blend that together. But the purpose of this demonstration is to show you how to use that distortion of your wide-angle lens to your advantage and emphasize the more interesting elements of the scene, and to balance out the foreground with the background.
People often think of wide-angle lenses as their go-to lens for huge landscapes, but I would encourage you to reverse that way of thinking and instead use your wide-angle lens for small, intimate scenes like this. Because by harnessing the power of your lens distortion, you can usually find the perfect balance between your subjects, and with careful placement of your camera, you can exaggerate the shapes that matter the most. And this is a vitally important aspect of composition, and it's also a lot of fun. So here's an example of what I'm talking about in real time.
So now I'm really happy with that horizontal shot. Lovely composition, lovely color and forms, and I have not moved the tripod at all. I'm in the exact same position that I was in earlier, and now all I've done is I've just gone vertical. So let me show you what happens. I'll try and keep this as steady as I can when I move this up and down. So if I angle this down here, you can see the top of the waterfall and the top of the frame has been stretched. So if I bring this back up, look how, in fact, if I put it in the middle of the frame, look how narrow and small the top of the waterfall gets. But as I push it to the top of the lens, that distortion exaggerates and stretches that to make it look far more dramatic and impactful. And I could do the exact same thing with the roots. If I decided to get closer to the roots, I could use that on the opposite end of the lens to stretch those out and make them look longer. Now with this one, if I keep this in the same position, I think I would actually zoom in a little bit to cut off the top of that waterfall there, which I don't want it to be in the frame, and I would then angle this down a little bit like that. But of course, if you look towards the left of the frame there, I don't like that the waterfall's cut off. So if I turn it more over to the left, that fixes that, but I'm losing some of these lovely roots here. So I think for this composition to work, I need to just push over to the right ever so slightly. I don't think I'll get closer, but I'll move over to the right so that I've got a little bit of a better balance. So let's try that out. Whoa. So with this composition, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be very kind to these roots. I don't want to damage this root system because it's a work of art. And to be honest, I doubt that I could damage it any worse than this raging river does in the winter. But anyway, I'm still trying to be very careful not to damage anything. And also this moss, which I think it's actually maybe a lichen, takes quite a long time to grow, so I don't want to damage that. So I'm quite precariously perched. But anyway, so again, I mean, the whole purpose of this tutorial is to kind of teach you how to exaggerate your foreground or balance them out with your background using that very precious lens distortion, which, like I said, you've probably paid a lot of money for, especially if you've got Sony G Master equipment. It's pricey, so use it to your advantage. And like I said earlier, it's these smaller, more intimate scenes like this. This is where the super wide is called for. Even a 14mm would work really well with this shot. I tend to use longer focal lengths when I'm shooting a big landscape with a grand vista. So this lens works perfectly in this situation. So I'll try and take this shot properly now. I'll do the focus stacks. I'll do the different shutter speeds, and if it's any good, I'll show it to you. But we're actually losing light now. It's getting quite dark, so I'm forced to use shutter speeds that are a bit longer than I would like, which means all of these leaves in the growing trees and the ferns, they're sort of moving around and creating a blur, which I don't want. If it turns out any good, I'll show you the shot.
Whether you shoot full frame, medium format, crop sensor or smaller, a super wide angle lens is a creative tool, and you can make small foreground elements appear huge in the frame just by positioning the camera in a way that flatters your most interesting subjects, and you get to decide where to set that balance by using a combination of position, elevation and focal length. So give it a try the next time you go out to shoot, and don't forget to enjoy the process. It's supposed to be fun.
Right, so I think it's time for us to move on. It's getting a bit cold, it's getting a little bit dark. I've lost the best of the light. I wanted to shoot a bit more, but I kind of came a little bit late, but quite happy with those shots that I got. So I hope that was in some way useful to you. Let's get Cletus back home, eh? You're a good boy, aren't you, Cletus? Cletus's training begins tonight. Did you bring a poo bag?
No.
No one will notice.
Cletus, get it! Not right now! No! Not time!
But later though.